What if the most powerful military on the planet is being torn apart from within, not by an enemy, not by a foreign invasion, but by the very man who commands it? What if I told you that in just the last few years, over 100 senior military officers in China have been purged, dismissed, or simply vanished from public life? And that just hours ago, 19 more members of China's legislature were removed, including 9 military officers, right before the biggest political meeting of the year? Folks, what is happening inside Beijing right now is unlike anything we have seen in modern Chinese history. This is not just politics. This is a power struggle at the very top of the world's largest military force. And if you are not paying attention to this, you need to start right now. Before we dive deep into this, if you find this kind of content valuable, do me a favor and smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs to understand what is really going on in China. It takes 2 seconds, it costs you nothing, and it helps us keep bringing you the stories that matter. Alright, let us get into it. So here is what just happened. On Thursday, February 26th, 2026, China's National People's Congress Standing Committee, which is basically the most powerful permanent legislative body in the country, announced the dismissal of 19 deputies. Now, 19 might not sound like a massive number when you consider the full Congress has about 2,878 members. But here is the thing. 9 of those 19 are military officers. And not just any officers. We are talking about people connected to the Central Military Commission, which is the absolute highest military decision-making body in China. We are talking about generals. We are talking about officers from the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and yes, the Rocket Force, which is the branch that controls China's entire nuclear arsenal. Now, the official explanation? Silence. The announcement did not even say why these deputies were removed. But let me tell you something. In China, when they do not tell you why, you already know why. These removals are almost always tied to corruption investigations. And when I say corruption, understand that in Chinese politics, that word covers a very wide range of sins, from actual financial crimes to disloyalty to the man at the top, Xi Jinping himself. But the dismissals did not stop at the legislature. The Standing Committee also fired 2 additional officials. One was the president of the military court, and the other was Wang Xiangxi, the Minister of Emergency Management, who had already been placed under investigation in late January for what the Communist Party calls serious violations of discipline and law. That is the standard phrase they use. It is their polite way of saying you are done, your career is over, and you might be heading to prison. Now, let me put this in context for you, because this is not an isolated event. This is part of a much, much bigger picture. Xi Jinping has been running what can only be described as the most extensive military purge in China since the days of Mao Zedong. And I am not exaggerating. According to a major report released just days ago by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, one of the most respected think tanks in Washington, over 100 senior officers have been purged or are potentially purged since 2022. Let that number sink in. 101 officers. That includes 36 generals and lieutenant generals who have been officially removed, and another 65 who are listed as missing or conspicuously absent from important meetings they were expected to attend. That represents roughly half of the senior military leadership of the entire People's Liberation Army. And the pace has been accelerating dramatically. In 2022, there was just 1 confirmed purge. By 2025, that number had exploded to 62 in a single year. And already in 2026, we have seen at least 11 more, including the biggest scalps yet. Let me take you through the timeline because it tells a remarkable story of just how far Xi Jinping is willing to go. Back in 2023, Things started getting very real when the entire leadership of the PLA rocket force was removed. The commander, Liu Chao, his deputy, and several other top officers all taken down. This is the branch responsible for China's nuclear missiles, folks. Then came the defense ministers. Wei Fenghe and Li Shangfu, both removed in 2023 and 2024 respectively. Li Shangfu had barely been in the job before he vanished from public view. And here is what is crazy. The replacement they brought in for the rocket force, a Navy admiral named Wang Ho-bin, he was also purged within about a year. Think about that. They brought in someone new to clean up the mess, and that person also fell. Then in October of 2025, the hammer really came down. 9 senior military officials were expelled from the Communist Party and referred for criminal prosecution in a single stroke. Among them was General He Weidong, who was the vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, basically the third most powerful military figure in all of China, right behind Xi Jinping himself. Also expelled was Admiral Miao Hua, who ran the political work department, the very department responsible for ensuring loyalty within the military. Let that irony sink in for a moment. The man in charge of making sure the military stays loyal was himself found disloyal. Others purged included the commander of the Eastern Theater Command, which is the command responsible for any potential military operations against Taiwan, and the commander of the People's Armed Police. But the bombshell that shook everyone came in January of 2026. On January 24th, China's Ministry of National Defense announced that General Zhang Youxia, the most senior uniformed officer in the entire People's Liberation Army and the senior vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, was under investigation for serious violations of discipline and law. Alongside him went Liu Zhenli, the chief of the Joint Staff Department. Zhang Youxia was not just any general. He was a national hero, a veteran of actual combat, the son of a Revolutionary War hero who fought alongside Mao Zedong, and most importantly, he was considered one of Xi Jinping's closest personal friends and allies. The two men had known each other since childhood. Their fathers were comrades. And she still took him down. So where does that leave the Central Military Commission today? In an extraordinary situation. Out of what was a full commission, only 2 members remain. Xi Jinping himself as chairman and General Zhang Shengmin, who happens to be the head of the commission's discipline inspection body, the man running the anti-corruption investigations. In other words, the only general left standing is the one hunting everyone else. Now here is the big question everyone is asking. Why? Why is Xi Jinping doing this? And is this really about corruption, or is there something deeper going on? Let us be real. Corruption is absolutely a genuine problem within the Chinese military. The rocket force in particular was riddled with procurement fraud. There were credible reports that money meant for missiles was being siphoned off, that officials were taking bribes in exchange for lucrative defense contracts, and that some of the equipment being delivered was substandard because of kickbacks. The political work department, which was supposed to catch all of this, was itself compromised. The people who were supposed to be policing corruption were participating in it. But analysts who study China closely will tell you that corruption charges are also the perfect political weapon. You can use them against almost anyone because the system is so opaque and the opportunities for graft are so widespread that very few senior officials have completely clean hands. So when Xi Jinping targets someone for corruption, the question is always not just whether they were corrupt, but why they were targeted now, and why them specifically. Several theories are circulating among China watchers. The first is straightforward power consolidation. Xi Jinping is now in his 14th year in power. He broke the 2-term tradition to secure an unprecedented 3rd term. And the more power you accumulate, the more paranoid you become about losing it. By removing anyone who has built their own networks, their own power bases, their own circles of influence within the military, Xi ensures that no one can challenge him. The message is clear. Your loyalty must be to me, and only to me. The second theory involves what analysts call the Fujian clique. Many of the purged officers, including He Weidong and Miao Hua, had connections that trace back to Fujian province, where Xi Jinping served in government from 1985 to 2002. These were people from his own network, his own factional base. The fact that he turned on them suggests either that they had grown too independent, or that Xi has concluded that no faction, not even his own, should be allowed to exist as an autonomous power center. The third theory is about Taiwan. Several of the purged officers held positions directly related to Taiwan contingency planning. General Zhang Youxia was responsible for military strategies concerning Taiwan. The Eastern Theater commander, who was purged, oversaw the operational plans for any potential conflict across the strait. There is speculation, and I want to emphasize this is speculation, that some of these officers may have expressed doubts about the feasibility or timing of military action against Taiwan. In Xi's China, expressing doubt about the boss's vision can be a career-ending or freedom-ending move. Now let us talk about what this means for China's military readiness, because this is where it gets really concerning, not just for Beijing, but for the entire world. The size report found that only 11 out of 52 key military leadership positions are currently filled. Think about that. Roughly 80% of the top jobs are vacant. The London-based International Institute for Strategic Studies released a separate report saying the Chinese military is now operating with serious deficiencies in its command structure. The Pentagon's own 2025 China Military Power Report stated that Xi's purge campaign is, quote, highly likely to weaken PLA operational effectiveness in the short term. And we can actually see the effects in real time. Here is a fascinating detail. In 2024, when China responded to what it considered provocative actions by Taiwan, it launched major military exercises within 3 to 4 days. But in 2025, similar responses took 19 days and 12 days, respectively. That delay might not seem like much, but in military terms, it is enormous. It suggests friction in the planning process, gaps in the chain of command, and a loss of coordination capability at the joint operations level. The pool of qualified officers to lead China's 5 theater commands has been reduced by more than a third. The Joint Staff Department, which is responsible for planning and executing complex multi-domain operations, has had its chief and multiple deputy chiefs purged. Russia-China joint military exercises, which used to be meticulously planned and regularly executed, have also seen disruptions. But here is the counterargument, and this is important to consider. Despite all of this turmoil at the top, the Chinese military has not stopped modernizing. It has not stopped building ships, developing missiles, or conducting operations. In fact, PLA activity around Taiwan, in the South China Sea, near Japan, and beyond the first island chain actually increased in some measures during 2025. The machine keeps grinding forward even as its leadership is being hollowed out. As one analyst put, China can still replenish the ranks pretty consistently. The bigger question is whether the new officers will be good at their jobs. And that raises perhaps the most dangerous concern of all. If you are a newly promoted Chinese general and you just watch the man before you get purged for possibly disagreeing with Xi Jinping, are you going to tell the chairman the truth? Or are you going to tell him what he wants to hear? History has shown us, from the Soviet Union to Saddam Hussein's Iraq, that when dictators purge their militaries and create a climate of fear, the quality of information flowing upward deteriorates dramatically. Officers tell the boss everything is fine, readiness is perfect, morale is excellent, even when it is not. And that creates a dangerous gap between perception and reality that can lead to catastrophic miscalculations. U.S. Senator Pete Ricketts, who chairs the Senate Foreign Relations Subcommittee on East Asia and the Pacific, commented after Zhang Youxia's removal that she is unlikely to accelerate any plan to attack Taiwan precisely because of this chaos. His exact reasoning was simple. It is very difficult to launch a complex military operation when you have just removed your top generals. But other experts caution that this does not mean the danger has passed. Even with the purges, China retains the ability to impose a blockade on Taiwan, conduct missile strikes, or execute other forms of military coercion that do not require the kind of complex joint command coordination that an invasion would demand. As one Size analyst wrote, China is still very capable of taking actions to attack Taiwan and, in the process, spoiling the United States whole day. So what happens next? Next week, the National People's Congress opens its annual session. This is largely a ceremonial affair. The Congress rubber stamps decisions that have already been made by the Communist Party leadership. But this year's meeting carries extra weight. China is grappling with economic headwinds, trade tensions with the United States, and now this unprecedented military upheaval. The removal of 19 deputies, including 9 military officers, just days before the meeting begins, is a signal. It tells everyone in the system that the purge is not over, that no one is safe, and that Xi Jinping's anti-corruption campaign, now in its second decade, shows no signs of slowing down. For those of us watching from the outside, the implications are profound. We are witnessing a leader who has concentrated more personal power than any Chinese leader since Mao Zedong, who has systematically dismantled every faction within the military, including his own allies and childhood friends, and who now sits atop a command structure where he and his chief inquisitor are essentially the only ones left at the table. Whether this makes China stronger or weaker in the long run is one of the most consequential geopolitical questions of our time. On one hand, if she successfully rebuilds the military with officers who are both competent and loyal, China could emerge with a more disciplined and more politically reliable fighting force. On the other hand, if the purges have created a culture of fear, if honest advice has been replaced by sycophancy, if experienced commanders have been replaced by political yes-men, then the world's second most powerful military could be far more fragile than it appears on paper. And a fragile military, led by a leader who believes it is invincible, is one of the most dangerous combinations in international relations. That is the story unfolding in Beijing right now. It is a story of power, paranoia, and the eternal question of what happens when one man tries to control everything. Keep your eyes on China, folks. What happens there affects all of us. If you made it this far, you clearly care about understanding the world we live in. Hit that subscribe button so you do not miss what comes next. Leave a like if this video opened your eyes, and share it with anyone who needs to hear this. We will see you in the next one.